Welcome back to the Talk of Fame podcast. I'm Kylie Montini, and on today's episode, we are welcoming Sierra Marie Bonn. She is an engineering student, an author, a former Miss America candidate, and a founder of Let's Go Full STEM Ahead, a nonprofit that promotes STEM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, education, and engagement to empower the next generation and innovators, and so much more. Welcome to the show, Sierra. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, what role did your interest in STEM play in your decision to become an author and a former America candidate?
I started thinking about STEAM education. So that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And I had been a violinist when I was in school, and so I really liked music. I always thought of myself as artsy and creative. I loved making things. I loved painting and drawing, and so arts were always very interesting to me. But I was really lucky when I was young to have teachers who recognized that I also had an aptitude for sciences and math. And they said, Sierra, you're a really good problem solver. You're really good at math. You should consider being an engineer. And I said, ew, that's gross. I don't want to be an engineer.
That's something I would
Because
say too, honestly.
well, when I was, in seventh grade, when they were saying these things to me, the only engineers I knew about were Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory and Bill Nye, the science guy. And
Honestly,
as
same.
yeah, as cool as those guys are in their own respective ways, I did not feel represented by them, right? Like
Yeah.
I enjoyed being artistic. I enjoyed participating in pageantry. I enjoyed wearing makeup and doing Girl Scouts and none of those things. I didn't view those men as role models for me. I didn't know that that could be an option for me to be an engineer because I didn't feel represented by the engineers I knew. And so for me, I realized that there was once I decided that engineering actually was cool and I started learning about women in engineering who were fusing their interests of, fashion and design into engineering fields, that I started to realize my own potential. And that's where I recognized an opportunity because I knew I wasn't the only little girl out there who had interest in art and interest in science and math. But I definitely wasn't the only girl who thought I couldn't be an engineer because I didn't look like Sheldon Cooper.
I know,
And so I
especially
thought,
if they're male, like they're not female, so it's much different than
right,
if you're like a male engineer.
exactly. There, and it's a relatively male-dominated industry, as most innovative fields are. And the National Science Foundation actually did a study about why that is. Why are they male-dominated spaces? Why are they predominantly white spaces? Why aren't more women and underrepresented minorities entering innovative fields? And they discovered that one of the main reasons was the stereotypes of what make an engineer, for example. Like when you first think of doctors or engineers, most people typically assume they're a man. And so it is really hard and detrimental to folks who want to enter that space because they don't feel welcome because of the stereotypes and the biases we as a culture carry. And so I heard that, I felt I resonated with it. It was my story. I know it was many other people's stories that were in my classes. And I said, this is a problem. It's a big, hairy, scary problem, but I want to take a crack at trying to solve it. And so that's actually how Let's Go Full Steam Ahead, my nonprofit, was born. I realized that need and I thought, let me jump in. Let me see what I can do to make a difference. And so my personal experiences in STEAM education led me to create it and led me to advocate it to where I am now.
It's insane. Like I know like with STEM, like or STEAM, for example, like there's not a lot of women in that are especially in the creative field or even on television in movies or in shows. Like in the Big Bang Theory, that's one of my personal favorite shows actually. But when you see that show, there's no really scientists like that are women. It's mostly like Sheldon Cooper, for example, but he's a male. Like if he's not female, like you really don't see an accurate representation, even though he is kind of a role model to so many people. But sometimes you want to see a female role model, not a male role model in engineering or STEM or whatever it may be. And there's not a lot of representation of that. And sometimes women are like, well, like, why do something in STEM if there's no woman on television doing the exact same thing? And that's something that I oftentimes realize is that not a lot of people talk about that or even realize that as a situation because with STEM, it's mostly a male-dominated industry, and people think like, oh, STEM is boring, that's for nerds, like, but it's like you can do whatever you want. Like, not a lot of people go into STEM just because there's not a lot of representation in that career field.
Definitely. And I think you hit on a couple interesting topics. So first, just for the audience's sake, I do want to clarify why I say STEAM instead of just STEM. So STEM often excludes the A, which is the arts, and that ranges from everything to drawing and painting and studio arts to performing arts like theater and music to humanities and English and writing and like written arts. So, right. So, like all the arts is what I'm including in that A in STEAM. And the reason why I'm intentional about including it is Dr. Georgette Yackman actually coined the term STEAM education and was intentional about the inclusion of the arts because a lot of people, again, stereotypes and biases just assume that science, the sciences like technology, engineering, math, science, those are very different than the artistic subjects. But in reality, one cannot exist without the other. Like they are very intricately related in just about every industry and field. And so when I think about educating the next generation of innovators, I want to make sure that they're equipped with all the tools, all the resources, they have a well-rounded education, and that they're equipped to interact with life because that's what STEAM education is about. Because a lot of people assume STEM is just for one type, one stereotype. That's why I don't choose to use that language, for one, because I feel like it is a little exclusionary. And like you said, some people think it's only for nerds. I self-classify as a nerd, so I'm okay with that. But being intentionally inclusive with the arts is how we can start to shift the tide and include more people to get involved in these fields that maybe stereotypically they didn't feel welcomed by. So that's one thing that you said in there that I did want to hit on. But also, you mentioned role models, and yes, one of my main kind of initiatives within Let's Go Full Steam Ahead is highlighting the stories of role models that do already exist, but who don't get the same accolades or the same highlights, who people don't know about, right? So if I say, can you name a famous scientist? Who's the first person that pops in your head?
A famous scientist. I would probably see Albert Einstein, probably.
Albert Einstein, perfectly reasonable. If I say name a famous like computer person, who's the first person that hops in your mind?
Oh my gosh. Like, I'm not familiar with that sort of thing, honestly. Computer person. Like, I have no clue. It honestly, to be quite
That's
frank.
okay. I'll save you from I put you on the spot, surprise interview. No, someone usually says like Steve Jobs, the founder of
Oh,
Apple.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's usually a pretty famous one. But one of my things is there are so many amazing women in these fields and underrepresented minorities in these fields that it's very interesting to me that overwhelmingly two white men are the ones that are referenced most as the most famous. And that's only because they're the ones that the stories get told over and over and over again. But fun fact, the person who invented computers, like the way computers think, the way they process, was a woman. The world's very first computer scientist was a woman, and her name is Ada Lovelace. And hardly anyone knows her story. And so I was really inspired to share her story, and that actually led me to writing my book called Innovators, which highlights women throughout history who have made contributions like Ada in regards to inventing the field of computer science, inventors in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, to begin sharing those stories and provide role models for the next generation so that they can see their own potential. Because you're exactly right. If we're only showing one type of person, if you don't feel that you identify with that singular role model, you may not feel welcome, even though you have the entire skill set, you have the aptitude, you have the creativity, you have all the tools or all the ingredients to make the recipe work. If you don't feel welcome to cook or bake, so to say, you'll never use your talents that way. And so my whole goal is to change that dynamic and empower others to bring their skill set and to show them the people who have come before that so they can be inspired to live up to their full potential.
That is so true. And I wanted to go back on like the mail in textbooks part that really stuck out to me when you mentioned it. Because when we're in maybe high school or middle school or whatever, or even in college, most people that talk about scientists or people that invented stuff are all male. There's barely any women in those textbooks that these teachers or even people even talk about. It's mostly all male scientists that invent this stuff. Maybe it's someone that is maybe like Albert Einstein, for example, like that invented things. Like he's kind of like the first person that comes to mind for a lot of people. Like it's all when someone asks you that question you asked me earlier, I'm sure a bunch of people will come up and say maybe Albert Einstein or a different male scientist. And no one can really name a female scientist. And that's something that a lot of people should learn about because like we know a lot of male scientists, but we do need to learn about women scientists because there's a bunch of women scientists out there that done as much as male scientists. But also their stories need to be heard no matter what gender they are.
Exactly. You hit an excellent point. So, I mentioned that I wrote a children's book called Innovators to highlight the stories of women. And I go through elementary schools. I've given over 1,000, almost 2,000 books now to students. I give these books free of charge to every student in the classroom to share these stories, to highlight those role models, not because I'm on some crazy kick to say only women should be scientists. Obviously, that's insane. I wouldn't, that's not the point of what I do. The point of what I do is to share the stories to empower all students, to empower all individuals, because it's just as important as it is to hear a little girl to hear that Hedy Lamarr was both an actress and she invented the technology for Bluetooth, which is phenomenal. And she's definitely someone everyone should look up.
Mhm.
It's just as important for little boys to hear the story of inclusion, because one of the reasons why we have such a male dominated field is not just that women or underrepresented minorities feel excluded, it's that there is not intentional inclusion happening at the table, right? So, one of the things that's so important is to start teaching at a young age that diversity is what fuels innovation. And so by teaching like everyone can be welcome to be a scientist, everyone is welcome to be a technologist, an engineer, an artist, a mathematician, an innovator. We begin to open the dialogue to say there is no need for only one stereotype, right? Like everyone has something meaningful to contribute. Everyone has a unique perspective. And that story and that teaching is relevant for all genders, for all folks, because again, I don't just walk into a classroom and say I'm only going to teach the little girls engineering today. Like that is the opposite of what I'm intending to do. The whole point is to share the empowerment of innovation for everyone.
That is so true. I love it. So, as you mentioned before, you founded Let's Go Full STEM Ahead. Can you kind of share the mission of your nonprofit and what prompted you to start it? I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit before, but kind of give us kind of like the backstory of it.
Yes. So Let's Go Full Steam Ahead is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit that empowers individuals of all ages to develop the critical thinking skills and the collaboration skills they need to advance in their personal and professional lives. And additionally, like I've mentioned before, we work to resolve the inequity and underrepresentation in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, or STEAM fields. So that is our mission. Our goal really is to help not only our current students who are like in classrooms right now, but also the entire workforce. Individuals of all ages really is all encompassing. So some of the activities that we do, yes, we go into classrooms and we teach about the intersection of science and art, and we talk about engineering activities and design activities. But I've also worked with college campuses to help their students think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Basically, just what we were talking about of how to be a good teammate, how to collaborate, how to respect other perspectives, how to share your voice when you have a differing perspective, that kind of thing. And I've also gone into correctional facilities and I've worked with folks who are justice involved, helped them with developing skills that, for example, if you've been in prison for a while, you may be not as familiar with social media or technology, computer, how to apply for a job online, right? Like those are some skills that we as a society are constantly developing. And if you're outside of society for a little while, you've got to learn those skills and develop them. So I've worked with them to develop their technology skills and communication skills so that when they become re-entered into the workforce, they are just as equipped to be empowered to contribute to our workforce too. So we do a whole lot across the board. And the reason I started Let's Go Full Steam Ahead, like I mentioned, I saw a need. But it really has grown so beyond what I had originally envisioned it to be. It was just kind of a passion project for me at the time. But now it really is a very intentional
Mhm.
nonprofit that works to help all of us be part of the greater innovative good.
So how have people reacted to it? Like, I know you said you go all over the place at colleges, high schools, and everything. Like, how have people reacted to this program?
Most people are really excited. One of my I'll talk about two kind of things. One is teachers. Teachers are usually always excited to have additional support. One of the initiatives that we do as well, and aside from giving out the books to classrooms, is I offer free curriculum for teachers so that they have ready-made um, activities for their classroom to just jump in and talk about why STEAM is important. And it goes through different facets. So it's either a science plus art activity or an engineering plus technology activity or a math plus art activity, right? So it combines the sciences and the arts into one activity because something I've seen in my state, I'm based in Kansas, for a handful of years, arts funding was on the chopping block. And it was very hard for our students, there was no funding to fund arts programs, so the students were going without. And that's just not a well-rounded education. And so if there's a way that we can combine math and art where students still get that well-rounded education and they're able to think of things outside of the box to engage that creativity, to engage that critical thinking, we're actually setting them up for more success.
Mm.
And with the free curriculum, we're helping teachers along the way because candidly, I don't think teachers are paid enough. They need to be paid
Accurate.
infinitely more. And if the one way that I can support them is giving them resources that they can use free of charge, it's something I'm really passionate about. But the other thing that I wanted to mention that people are excited about is Let's Go Full Steam Ahead is also a scholarship program. So we
Oh,
provide
really?
scholarships. Yes. So one of the things we've really focused on is knowing education, unfortunately, just how teachers aren't paid enough, college and education is too expensive. And so, if that's a barrier to entry for people, which it is for a lot of people, whether they are 18-year-olds going straight to college after high school, or if they're folks who are returning as an adult or starting as an adult, or if they're transitioning careers, usually money is a major barrier to education. And so,
Yeah.
if we can do anything to mitigate that barrier or lower the barrier as much as we can, we do that. And so we've been able to award 4 scholarships so far. We are in our 5th year of operation, so we're trying to give away scholarships every year. And we're getting ready to open our application for the fall. So the shameless plug for anyone listening. If you're interested in applying for a Let's Go Full Steam Ahead scholarship, it's for anyone who is involved in a science, technology, engineering, arts, or math industry, which if you think hard enough, that's pretty much anything. So the application will be available on our website, letsgofullsteamahead.com, which I can share with you, Kylie.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can put it in the notes or something. But we are always looking for people to give scholarship money to. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll make sure to pull it in the website description for people to check out if you're interested. Maybe you're a senior in high school or something. But with the college, like tuition, like you are literally exactly right on that. Like as a like senior in high school and now I'm literally like going insane on colleges. Like, but the biggest problem, like, for me, I'm sure for other people as well, is the tuition for especially if you're maybe in a state school or out of state of school, like it's so darn expensive to the point where no one can really afford it. Even if it's like maybe an in-state public school, like it's still expensive. Like that, I know like a lot of people can sometimes not afford it, even if you have decent pay, and that's something that a lot of people deal with is that like United States college tuition costs more than different countries. Like I was talking to this lady who did my hair a couple weeks ago, and she was born in Ukraine. And basically, like her the tuition for school in Ukraine is like $5,000 a year or $500 a year. And I'm thinking to myself like, that's insane. Like $500 a year or something like that. I'm just like, now I wish I lived there to like get like a like decent pay, so I would have to live in debt all my life because I know that's a situation a lot of adults deal with. But it's crazy to see how much the United States pays or people have to pay for college per year is insane.
It is. It's a major inhibitor to a lot of folks getting into those innovative career paths that I mentioned before. So one of the things that like I myself am a first generation college graduate. I just recently graduated with my master's degree from Wichita State University in innovation design because, I wanted to be an engineer, so I got an engineering degree. I liked innovation, so I got an innovation degree. I wasn't able to do that without external scholarships. I'm a first generation American on my dad's side, and school is expensive
Yeah.
and I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. No one in my family had graduated college. We didn't know what we were, we didn't know how to do any of the scholarship applications or Pell grants or any of those things.
Mhm.
And it was only through scholarship organizations that I was a part of that and student loan debt, unfortunately. I'm very grateful that mine is not as severe as some folks. But only through those two means was I able to graduate, which helped me get careers in innovative fields, the career that I wanted to get, right? To be a professional engineer, to be a professional innovation designer. It's like to do those careers, I had to have the education. And so let's go full steam ahead. That's why we're a scholarship organization to help lower that barrier because for a lot of people going to college, they're doing it so that they can further their career to make
Mhm.
money, to support their families, to pursue academic and career goals, right? So that being a major barrier is the reason why we started the scholarship program to help lower that barrier, to help people on their way.
I love it because most career fields require college education or a
At
degree.
this point,
Some of
yeah, a
them
lot of
don't,
careers
like maybe
require.
business or something you don't really need a college degree. But most degrees, maybe such as engineering, do require college degrees. And a lot of people
At
might
least
not have the
sometimes.
money to go to college for that certain degree.
Yeah, at least some. I will say within the last couple years, from a workforce development kind of perspective, a lot of technical careers, technical colleges are opening up certificate pathways so that's not a full college degree that you have to pay for, but they do certify you and you learn everything you need to know in order to enter that field. So no one from a technical school pays me to say this, but highly recommend anyone who's listening, if you're thinking about entering an innovative field, technical colleges are also a good way to start in a STEAM field. If you don't know if that's something necessarily you want to do, but it gives you all the training you need. It gives you the certification so that you can go get a job. And if you decide later on that an actual diploma, an actual degree is something that you'd like to seek from a university or a 4-year college, then you can usually transfer those credits and be a little bit further done with that field, and you probably will be able to work a job because you're certified to work a job
Mhm.
as you do it. So
Yeah.
that's just a little life advice, I guess, for
Hey,
for
that's true.
folks who are
I've heard it a
interested.
million times over the last couple of months. My parents are like, "Oh, you should go to a community college for a semester to then go to like a state school or whatever you want to do." I'm just thinking to myself like, why would I want to go to a community college? Like,
Because
I
it's
know it's
cheaper
much
and you
cheaper,
learn the same thing. That I am a
right?
big advocate for community colleges
Right?
and
It's so much cheaper than a state like school.
it is. It's much cheaper and you learn the same things. Like another resource, I'm just dropping all the resources here on this podcast, but one of my favorite things also is the CLEP exam. It's CLEP. If you're familiar with the CLEP program, for those of you listening, I guess on the podcast, you might not be. So it is a like a examination where you can get college credit. So if you've taken, say, in high school, an American history class and you feel like, yeah, I know a good chunk of American history. I think I could probably take a test and do pretty good. You can sit for that exam, the CLEP exam. And if you score a certain percentage, the percentage is based off of whatever college you want to go to. They all have different metrics. So an 80% or a 60% or better or something. It just consult with your academic institution. But if you pass based on their score, you get college credit and you don't have to take the class. And that's much cheaper than paying tuition and fees for that class. The test is only about $100, I think, like, but check the actual website before quoting me. But I highly recommend it. I actually have a whole TikTok series about how to take CLEP exams. So if you're curious about those and how they can affect your learning, I'm happy to help support in any way.
Yeah, I never heard of that. I need to look it up now that you mentioned it now.
Yeah, just CLEP exam. Just look that up, and most accredited institutions take them. And there's over, I want to say, like 30 different exams you can take. So it's basically the equivalent of doing your freshman year with exam fees, but you don't have to pay tuition, like you would if you were sitting in the class. So you can get a lot of credits knocked out of the way, for much cheaper and more affordable. And again, shameless plug, let's go full steam ahead. The scholarship can be used toward those exams or toward technical school or community college or whatever. It doesn't have to be a state school or a four-year institution. So we're just
Awesome.
here to help, help with the academic and career goals.
Oh, I get it. I get it, Queen. I get it. But lastly, like, what are your favorite books or resources for those in learning more about STEAM or STEM topics?
Yeah, there's a whole lot that I could list. We might be here for hours if I keep asking answering that question. But well, okay. First, shameless plug for my book. It highlights 15 women who are positive role models, and it's called Innovators. It's on our website. Definitely recommend checking that out just as a primer to STEAM education and an introduction to women that you maybe have never heard of before who have done really cool things. So obviously had to throw that shameless plug in there. But also there are some really fantastic podcasts, and I'm blanking them off the top of my head. But if you just look up like different tech podcasts that are like trending on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I listen to those kind of all the time. Just they cover different topics like cybersecurity or AI or like ChatGPT. They talk about different policy that's going to affect in education and teaching students about these things. That's it's always changing. So anything tech related is something I recommend people getting into. Even if you're like, I'm going into nursing, why should I care about technology? You should care because nurses use a lot of technology. They use
That's
computers
true.
to process medical documents. They have to learn a lot about the body. You can learn about that online. There's a lot of different ways that technology intersects with different industries. So no matter what field you're in, definitely recommend picking up a technology podcast or a couple. And then finally, when it comes to like um, media, I'm trying to remember. There's an account I follow called the Gina Davis Institute, which
Bro, that's literally
really
what I
recommend.
was thinking you were gonna say, actually.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal organization that they're really focused on ending unconscious biases and fostering inclusion and eliminating those harmful stereotypes in media. And I highly recommend following them and just they've got different webinars that you can join. They highlight different authors who are writing about these things. And just highly recommend Gina Davis organization and the Gina Davis Institute. And then you asked about a book. So final book that I'll recommend is Invisible Women. Criado Perez is the author of Invisible Women. And it kind of talks about how when, for example, only men are at the factory floor designing things, they don't have the perspective to think about how the decisions they're making are affecting women. And when you invite women to the table to be the designers too, to share kind of their perspective, the whole world gets a little bit better because we're thinking from multiple perspectives. And it also dives into racial differences, gender differences, cultural differences, and how that affects the world that we live in. And I highly, highly recommend that book to anyone. So it's called Invisible Women.
That is the best way to wrap up this episode. I really appreciate all the information you gave us today. I know I learned something new today from this episode. I hope you guys learned something new today too about STEAM or STEM in general and different resources if you're interested or just want to learn more information. But I want to thank you so much for coming on and taking the time and really keep up the great work because you really are doing amazing things.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And truly, if anyone would like to reach out, Kylie, if you want to put my contact info in the show notes, I'm happy to chat and share more, and just empower others. That's my main goal in life is to empower everyone to see their own potential to thrive. So
I love
happy to
that.
help in any way I can.
Ooh, so I will make sure to put all of her information below for you guys to check her out and amazing work she's doing. Make sure to like, subscribe, and review to stay tuned for more episodes. It will